Well, IPPR has argued, as others have done, that the deficit reduction plan should be spread over a longer period of time, 6 years, not 4, that we should respond to current circumstances by ensuring that we do put growth in the economy first. Growing the economy is the best way of reducing the deficit. Cuts are needed. I mean, I think everybody should accept that, but not at the speed and scale that we're currently seeing. And when the economy does look to be so flat, when it's clear that demand is not materialising in the private sector, then we should be moderating our public expenditure cuts. And so we would like to see a slower pace of deficit reduction, and we would like to see measures to stimulate employment and growth. I think the budget will be a growth budget. I think it's inevitable that they will want to say, look, we've got plans for growth here and not just for cuts. I mean, that's already obvious from what they're saying. And I expect to see a sort of package of measures in the budget for cutting taxes, perhaps also some extra public spending in pro-growth areas like infrastructure. There's not a huge amount of headroom for that, obviously, because the public finances are not in a state to sustain lots of giveaways by any means. But I would expect George Osborne to want to credibly be able to say that he has a plan for growth in the budget, and test will be whether he really has. I think Ed Balls will be a very effective opponent. I think both he and George Osborne are very good political strategists. In that sense, they're well matched. Ed Balls obviously brings with him a huge knowledge of the Treasury and economic policy, and he has confidence in his own ideas. I think the key thing for him is, can he persuade the British public that he can be a steward of the public finances, that even if he doesn't want to apologise for Labour's record, and it's certainly not the case that the deficit was caused by overspending, it was primarily caused by the recession, but even that being the case, can he persuade the public that they can trust the public finances with him, and he has more credibility on the economy than George Osborne? That's his big test. I think it's a real problem and a mistake if you just say, well, the big society is a cover for cuts, or it's a vacuous concept and all the rest of it. I actually think it's better to engage with it and to give it real content, to say, look, actually, if we do want to live in a strong society with decent communities where people have more ownership of what happens in their localities, where they can do things more in civil society together, then it should be engaged with. Let's flesh out an agenda for that. So I'm not one of those people that just says let's dismiss it. However, I do think that expecting communities just to pick up the tab from the withdrawal of the state from cuts in public spending is wrong. I don't think there's an opposition between state and civil society. I think they work best together. So really trying to think about how you get to live in a good society or a big society, whatever you want to call it, is the right endeavour, but not if you make it a zero-sum game with the public sector. Well, I'm all in favour of real localism. I think people on the progressive side of the argument should really try to back a real localism. My worry about this bill is it's a lipstick localism. It's a cosmetic commitment to devolution, when in fact the real powers that local government would need, the kind of financing, the ability to raise resources locally that you really need to make big decisions about what happens in a local area, those aren't being devolved. And I want to see the bill go further in respect of really passing down power to local government, requiring local government to work with local communities. Of course, it's not just about giving power to another tier of government. And I support elected mayors, and I think elected mayors are a good thing. I would rather see them at a bigger area, so not just the existing city areas, but bigger city regional spatial scale with powers over things like transport and economic development, as you have it in London. But generally, I think Britain will become, and England in particular, will become a more localist place, and the argument should now be real localism or lipstick localism.